2020, our very first program. My name is Lou Ann Smoot, and I welcome you on behalf of our 3 sponsors. And we have the names displayed up here so you won't forget. But we have the American Association of University Women, the League of Women Voters of Tyler-Smith County, and the Tyler Public Library, and the Friends of the Library. So these 3 organizations are providing this program to you as a public service. Not only do these 3 organizations provide the public service, but our speakers are providing you a public service because they receive no remuneration whatsoever for the time they spend in preparation and the time they spend actually here talking with you. So always take time to thank them for what they do for this town, this group here, and for helping all of us to understand global affairs more deeply. If you have not yet purchased a Great Distinctions book, they are available at the second counter in the library. They cost $25, which is a discounted price thanks to these organizations who have underwritten the cost so that we can bring it down to $25 for you. Those of you that may have a book will notice that the order in which the topics are produced here in the book, that order is different from the order in which we will be producing our programs, but that's okay. We made some adjustments for our speakers' schedules, and it works out fine for us. And all you have to do is turn to the right page here and watch your information. So no problem. Great Decisions began nationwide in 1954. And it's sponsored by the Foreign Policy Association, which is also written at the top of that poster there. We don't know exactly when it started here in Tyler. We've been told that it ranged from 1975 to perhaps 1980, but regardless, we have been doing Great Decisions here in Tyler for a long time. The Foreign Policy Association aims to spread global awareness and understanding of foreign policy issues. Our speaker today is Ed Santos. Now, many of you, I think, already know Ed, and if you do, you like him. You can't help but like Ed. He has been active with the Better Business Bureau, Tyler's Sunrise Rotary, Tyler YMCA, his church, and numerous Filipino American Associations. What better speaker to call upon to discuss the Philippines and the U.S. than someone who lived through the Marcos dictatorship and witnessed the emergence of democracy through the 1986 People's Revolution of the Philippine Islands. Please help me welcome Ed Santos.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you very much. Good afternoon now, and Happy New Year! I'm supposed to be speaker number 7 for the Philippines, but we rearranged because I'm number 1. I'm just kidding. I enjoy being a Tylerite. I enjoy being an East Texan. First, give me a half a minute to pause in silence. I want you to all to please, for a moment, think of all the people affected by the recent volcanic eruption. Thank you very much. And I will purposely not show much of anything over here because I want us to tell stories. Because what's on the book, you can read. What is not on the book, you can Google. and there will be lots of visuals, especially about the recent eruption of Taal volcano. It's T-A-A-L, Taal volcano, which is only about the province of Batangas and particularly the island of Taal is only about 60 kilometers away from Manila, which is a very densely populated city, significantly densely populated city. How densely populated is Manila? Well, when I left, how long have I been in the US? Were you able to mention that? How long have I been in Tyler?
28 years.
He said 35. 35 pounds ago. That's what it is. I arrived here in 1991 when the Whopper was 79 cents and so was gas. So, when I left Manila, there were 16 million people in the city of Manila. And I moved to Tyler. There were 56,000 people and 100,000 cows maybe. So that was a big change. And I stayed. I've always kept home in the Tyler area. And I loved it. I tell people, because they always ask me, especially my classmates, because I am from this big city, they ask me always, where is Tyler? Why Tyler? A lot of them are in LA or in New York and in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I tell them because Tyler chose me. You chose New York, you chose California, but Tyler chose me and I have stayed and enjoyed it. I am very proud, very, very proud to announce that on Monday, 2 days ago, my brother became an American citizen. Yes. He was able to acquire his naturalization, citizenship, and became American. So, now, everybody knows I am originally from the Philippines, born and raised. But my brother became naturalized last Monday to become American from an Australian citizenship. Because he migrated to work in Singapore for about 6 years after graduating the university, and then followed that, he moved on to Sydney to work another 6 years. So he made it to Tyler after working as an OFW, an overseas Filipino worker, and you will see that, you will hear that if you look at the news about the Filipinos. You will see OFW everywhere. It's actually in the dictionary of the Philippines. OFW is overseas Filipino workers. By the way, this gives me an opportunity to ask, what is the #1 export in the Philippines or from the Philippines? #1 export. Correct. The people. The people. Yes, we are export quality. But that is thanks to the Americans who established education. We were under Spain for 400 years, 4 centuries. We were liberated in 1896. The islands was liberated from Spanish rule in 1896, and the Americans took us as a commonwealth and was there for over 50 years. We were not given opportunity to be educated by the Spaniards, by the Spanish Empire. That's why, even though most Filipinos have, a majority of us have Spanish last names, and usually American or Western first names, we very, very rarely speak very good Spanish. Only the Peninsulares and the Insulares who were able to get education in Spain, Filipinos that went to Spain, that were given the opportunity to learn the vocabulary and learn higher education. But it was through the advent of the Americans upon arrival called the Thomasites, or nicknamed Thomasites because they arrived aboard the USS Thomas. These were very young ladies and gentlemen, very young, that arrived, that were recruited by the government of the United States to the Philippines to be teachers, and they established the Philippine Normal College, or Philippine Normal School. Became a college, now it's a university. It's still there. My grandmother is a product of PNC on my paternal side, on my dad's side. So she taught me good English. She corrected my English. My mother happens to have worked and retired from Filipino Shell, the Shell petroleum company that is UK-based and Dutch-based. Oh, my grandmother and my mother corrected my English. They will tell me there's no such word as luggages. It's a collective now. Luggage, one or many. Oh, they will correct me. Oh, I will tell you. I had. So, but now, that gives you an understanding why we have these Spanish last names. My last name is Santos. Couldn't be more Spanish than that. Okay? My middle name, which every Filipino's middle name, is always the mother's maiden name. So, that you carry both your daddy and your mommy's last names. So, my middle name is a three-word contraction of nouns. It's Vergel de Dios. It's very Spaniard. Originally, most of the Vergel de Dios are originally from Portugal. But where Portuguese is the original homeland of Ferdinand Magallanes, who discovered the Philippines in 1521. So, 1521. That was the discovery date. March 16, 1521 was when the Philippine Islands was discovered. They landed in the island of Mactan, in the island of Cebu, in the Visayas archipelago, the Visayas group of islands, which is central of the Philippines. Okay, here we go. All right, there's officially 7,107 islands. Yes, that's quite a bit. Now, and this is depending on whether it's high tide or low tide, which ebbs and tides every day. So essentially though, there are only less than 200 islands that are habitable. Same thing with the language. With as many islands as there are about 200 islands that are, or 200 languages. Filipinos call them dialects because somehow we try to understand each other. But essentially, it's not just a phonetic difference, not just a spelling, inflection. They're not just those differences. They're totally different because of the meanings. They're not all the same meanings for every word. Now the language is an amalgamation of a lot of different influences. Just like the Philippines has been colonized by so many other countries. Before the Spaniards arrived, there was already trading with Chinese people. There were already merchants there. There were already Muslims from Borneo, from Indonesia, from the very south. So there has been, because we do not have borders to another country. We are an archipelago as a nation. Okay, so we do not cross borders. We have a lot of tropical fish in between, a lot. You know how sushi is very popular in Japan? Guess where they get the fish? It's imported from the Philippines, the very exotic ones. Yes, so they're cheap when they get them in the Philippines. They're too super expensive when they eat them in Japan. And guess what? They don't even cook them. Oh boy. All right, now, please, I know there are a few questions on the discussion about what is on the workbook, but I really want you to ask me questions because I do well with that. Before I allow you to ask questions, I will tell you a story. This is my story. Soon as I arrived, after recovering for about, maybe, it was about 3 nights, after recovering from jet lag, my first day at ETMC, that was history, remember? UT Tyler now, right, Doc? So, first thing you do as a new employee, typically, you spend a few hours in human resources. Get your name tag, you get registered as an employee, okay? And then, for half a day, I was shown to my department, which I am a physical therapist, so the rehab department's where I'm based, and my boss was introduced to me, and all he could do is tell me, these are the policies and procedures manual, here's a chair, sit down and read through them. Manuals, you know, how thick and heavy and very boring as can be. And I just was recovering from jet lag. So when he said, hey, Ed, it's noon, it's lunchtime, and I'm buying. I didn't know what all that means, but I heard lunch. I understood that. But really, I didn't know what I'm buying meant, you know? But that means, you know, it was his treat. Well, I didn't have money. I had pesos. Philippine pesos. All right. So, the next thing he said is, just follow us, we're going to Subway. Well, fortunately, when I was 11 years old, I had the fortunate opportunity to spend time in New York, New Jersey, and Los Angeles, because every Filipino has a relative there. Right, Michelle? And by the way, Michelle was the one who asked me to take this position of speaking because she really grew up here in the United States. Michelle is president and CEO of the Better Business Bureau. So, okay, I was following, so here we are. Here we are, we were gonna cross the street and I saw, oh, Subway, oh, a sandwich restaurant. And it was right at noon, and so there was a queue, there was a number of people there, and I really didn't know how it works. So I went up and followed, and there were like 4 of us with my boss, Carl Duncan, and he said, you go first and just follow these people, what they do. And okay, fine. I was hungry, so I was following, and finally it was my turn. And you know, people that were having or wanting to get lunch and the people working behind the counter were in a bit of a rush because there were more people coming. And so this like probably 16-year-old freckled little girl behind the counter looks at me and says, white or wheat? Oh, I'm brown. So let's get wheat. That's closer to brown. All right. She holds up white or wheat because that had to be an explanation. And then I was looking and she was looking, and so there were all kinds of meats, you know, all kinds of slices of meat. And in the Philippines, you get what they give you, you don't choose. There are no options. So, okay. So I just, what we did was, I just kept pointing on what was there. We don't have turkey in the Philippines. That's a country. So I just kept pointing and she kept putting on there. And then She looks up at me and asks, American or Swiss? I said, my passport in HR. I'm Filipino. So she holds up the American or Swiss what? Cheese. Next. So I pick up, you know, at that time, 1991, they had no provolone, no, what was the other one, Jack? Cheese. So it was interesting. And then I thought the agony was over. And she passes the sandwich that she was making to this boy who's also probably 14 years old, I don't know. And he looks at me, and after I chose all the veggies, looks at me and says, Italian or French? Can you imagine? What was he talking about? Dressing. Dressing. And here's the lesson. As Americans, we take a lot of things for granted. A lot, including this freedom and opportunity of free expression. We think everybody should understand us instead of us trying and giving an effort to understand others. And when you're rushed, when I have a line behind me, and they are also rushing because you don't know what subway is, it's pressure. You know, it can be, and it can be unnerving pressure. So, if you travel, when you travel, whether it's in Asia, Europe, Australia, anywhere, you will know right away when there's a pack of Americans. They can be loud, and those who travel know. Even from the airplane, you will know who are loud and demanding. That can take usually a lot of things for granted. And we are not used to being understanding or trying to understand the customs and traditions of others. So next time, you will never forget Mr. Ed when you go to Subway. And actually, what I just shared with you is typically what I share whenever I'm called by the federal courthouse magistrate judges to give a small talk to encourage newly naturalized citizens. Because I share this because we all have our stories, especially on how we have to adjust to the American ways. It's very rich. Oh, I'm telling you, a lot of richness in the colorful life of coming to America. All right, now ask me questions because, yes, sir.
Yeah. How many people of Filipino descent do we have in the U.S.?
Oh, good. I actually got statistic for that because that's a very good question. Foreign-born Smith County residents come from all over the world. From the different parts of the Americas, about 14,000. From Mexico, about 12,000. This is Smith County. Okay. Philippines, 912. Europe, 666. Africa, 594. So there is statistics out of the Smith County census. However, personally, in what I have witnessed, for Filipinos or Filipino-born, there are who are actively involved in events that involve our community, Filipino Americans, there are approximately, within Tyler, 400 families within Tyler, and about see them. Don't get sick too bad, too ill too bad, because there are weekends in the ICU of both hospitals where all you see are Filipinos. Right, Doc? Yes. The best nurses. They will take care of you compassionately. Compassionately. Yeah, they will be there before you need a call light. They will anticipate your needs. Questions? Questions? Yes? Oh boy. Yes, Doc. Oh, go ahead.
So don't you think it's a little unusual how the Filipino American community both sticks together and yet socializes with everybody? Not isolated, but at the same time never lost.
Yes, we, like most Asians, we like rice. And like our ways in life, we stick together like rice. If you have enjoyed jasmine rice in Asian meals, it sticks together. But we blend well with other cultures. Some of the most beautiful babies. Currently, there are 4 former Miss Universes who are from the Philippines. That's a lot that are alive. 4 of them still alive. It's amazing. It's amazing. And so we mix very well. If you want to see Filipinos, they're all over the world. I was talking to Pat right there from the ham radio that gives free classes here, and he was telling me he moved here from Alaska. And guess what? Filipinos, like Eskimos. Today we are blessed with a warmer weather outside. You know how the temperature is outside. It's a little humid. That's very everyday weather in the Philippines. That temperature, you will see Filipinos wearing jackets with that temperature. Go ahead.
Are there a lot of Filipinos involved in the medical profession?
Yes, the majority are, really. The majority are nurses that migrate because it's the demand of American labor. It's the demand that makes them migrate. And usually, if you ask boys or girls in the Philippines, you know, very early on, kids will aspire to go abroad. The Philippines is very poor still. Very rich naturally, but very poor economically. So there is the intention of families to send somebody abroad, not only for the benefit of who goes abroad, but because of remittances. Remittances. Now, when you encounter Filipinos here, you will know they work a lot of hours. Sometimes they will not observe the holidays just because they have special needs at home and special circumstances, especially like the calamities that we go through every year. Oh, I need to explain to you. You know, we might have 1, 2, 3 tornado warnings, alerts every year in Tyler, the city, and in East Texas, a little more than that. And every hurricane in the Philippines it will be called a typhoon because it's in the Pacific. There's no difference, hurricane and typhoon, same thing. Every year, we receive, we name, everybody names the meteorological society names these typhoons with a first name, with one name, and it's according to the alphabet. Every year we go through the alphabet twice at least, and we are not talking drizzle. We're talking island rats. These are heavy, like the Haiyan, like what happened in New Orleans. This is like 2 times the alphabet. So when you know of anybody more resilient than the Filipinos, you let me know. I want to meet them. Because these Filipinos can take a shower when it's drought in, I was not finished with my Subway story when they showed me what large cup mint, you know, for a drink. To us, I said, that's a pitcher of water, of drink. Because back home, a large cup is your courtesy water cup here. Because we are used to not consume so much. Because you're going to hell if you waste anything. Yes, that's what the grandmoms will teach you. For every grain of rice is 10,000 years in hell. For real. That's why you can ask these Filipinos here, oh, grandma is not gonna be happy. And you know the punishment when we were growing up? The punishment if you leave anything on your plate, anything that is edible, you know what sea salt is? Rock sea salt. They'll put some on the floor, on cement floor, and you kneel down there. You kneel on that. Or mungo beans. Correct? This is not just at home. They do the same in school. Yeah, I grew up with corporal punishment. Yes, it was, you don't waste anything. My mother, oh, God bless her, she passed on in 2007. When she arrived, oh, and I let her, we're not used to paper towels. You know what she would? Whenever she'd wipe the kitchen counter, and it's very clean, but if it's just what? Oh, she will reuse this and even wash it. Paper towel. Because we're not used to wasting. We cannot afford to waste. Really. Alright. More questions. I love questions. Andy.
What is going on with like sea level rising?
Sea level rising.
Yes. You got all these islands.
Yeah, we don't have, we're just a little above the equator, and we don't have snow anywhere close in the Pacific Rim. But we are a very volcanic group of islands. So sometimes every day the number of islands changes because of that. But as far as water rising, I'm not sure where it is more which islands are more affected, because still I don't know if there are danger zones as far as it covering islands. Probably yes, but only islands that are not habitable, because the beach fronts, particularly the islands of Boracay, in the Panay Islands, and the island of Palawan, have still in the last 10 years #1 islands for tourism. So you can write that down, Palawan and Boracay. But it's become very commercialized. Half of the population in the islands are Europeans. And the stores and hotels and resorts accept euros and dollars. Questions, you raised your hand, yes.
Dan, could you share with us just a little bit of your experience living in
The Marcos regime. Okay, my favorite and short sharing about the Marcos regime is this. There was a lot of people very unhappy after Corazon Aquino left office. When she finished her term as President of the Republic of the Philippines, which she was brought into power by the People's Revolution, a lot of people were unhappy because nothing happened. And I tell them this, the fact that you can say that is that proof that something happened. Because during the Marcos days, which lasted for at least 18 years, during the Marcos dictatorship, the conjugal dictatorship, during those days, if you say anything that is against Ferdinand Marcos or Imelda Marcos, you will never see your last name again. I went to physical therapy school. There are a lot of medical schools. Here, I'm surprised to talk to my colleagues who went to anatomy class and never worked on a cadaver. Or they just did on parts of cadaver. In the Philippines, when I was in my senior year, I had like 6 cadavers to work on. Because it was cheap. People were being salvaged by this government. The Marcoses are back in the Philippines, but they're getting more and more irrelevant. It's not going to be, they're not going to be gone. They have a lot of money. A lot of money. In the United States, somehow, somewhere, sometime helped in keeping them in power. Yes, sir.
I have two questions.
Yes, sir.
One is, are you familiar with the Huckabaloots?
Am I familiar with?
The Huckabaloots.
Oh, Hukbalahap. 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 Yes.
Do they know that?
Yes, the hucks. Yes. Yes, I am familiar. Hukbong, Hukbalahap. Hukbong bayan laban sa mga Hapon. That is the guerrilla warfare versus the Japanese. We have a very prominent retired physician in Tyler, whose name is Dr. Virgil Gonzalez, and some of you know him. He is a retired pathologist, the first pathologist that was in residence in Tyler. He moved here in 1954. He is 96 years old and plays golf twice a week. Still, that man can tell you the atrocities that made him passionately move to the United States. Because this will be graphic, but he shared with me how he saw, and this is very graphic, how he saw babies thrown by the Japanese Imperial Army in the air and received back with a bayonet. And that's what, until this date, at 96 years old, he doesn't own anything Japanese. Anything made in Japan or Japanese influence. He will not, because of that. Although, at the same time, the Japanese Imperial Army hired a lot of Koreans into the army. That were very, very brutal. Yes, they were bad. They were really bad. And they were there to conquer. They were there not to make friends. Questions?
Well, they,
Oh, sorry.
my thing with the Huckabaloots
Yes.
goes back to the Spanish-American War.
Mm.
My grandfather was in the Philippines, and
Yes.
I got 2 arrows
Arrows.
from that shot, the Huckabaloots shot at the American soldiers.
Oh boy.
My second question was, I'm a genealogist. How can you, with their change in the Spanish, can you trace your ancestry back to before the Spanish got? Do you know what your ancestors' names?
It will be very difficult because the Spaniards were the one, that's why we have the Spanish last names, because before they arrived in 1521, most of the natives only had one name, if they even had one. So it's very difficult to trace further back, or even during the American. Now, the wonderful thing is, when you see Filipinos and when Filipinos get to meet each other, one of the first questions we ask each other is, what is your last name? Because with the last name, we will be able to somehow connect which island they're originally from or which province. And with that, there will be some connection of who your relatives are or which clan you're from, which families you may be related to. It's very interesting because when we were named by the Spaniards, there were different ways that they named us, but a good majority would be from folks that were certain. Let's say if sugar cane was predominant in that island, they may have called your last name Azúcar. You know, if your last name, there is a town in Iloilo, in the island of Iloilo, in Pototan. In this town, everybody's name started with a P. Because the town's name starts with a P. It's very interesting on how it, and then a larger majority is people were named according to the patron saint of that town, because the Spaniards' greatest legacy to the Filipinos is the Christianity. And we are still a majority, the only majority Christian nation in all of the Southeast Asian Pacific. That's why, if you will notice, except for Pope Benedict, since Pope Paul VI, they all have visited the Philippines within the first or second year of their papacy, because it's very strong Catholic nation. Yes, sir.
With a very large population living on very small islands.
Yes.
How do people, I assume that transportation is a little bit different.
Oh, yes, yes. And like most of the world, if you own a car, you're in the upper 10% richest people. Now, since I've moved and migrated to the US, there has been a shift in the paradigm as far as lending. Because back in the days of my parents, everything was paid by cash. Credit is bad. So Filipinos that arrive here and they are somehow forced to go into debt so that they can borrow money or buy a car. It's a total culture shock. Total culture shock, because we don't like that, but it is necessary for business. It is even necessary for subsistence.
How do people get them out?
From island to island, there was just not too long ago, there was a Filipino who is married to an American, to a Texan, and it was going to be their first time to visit the Philippines as a married couple, and he's never left Gilmer. And we met, and oh boy, it was a continuous session of getting her culturated, I guess, to how things are, because he was like, should I be reserving, you know, my bus or my small boat transfer from this to that? What if we go to the next island? Do we have to reserve it ahead? Do I go to Kayak, Google, and yeah. I said, oh, you have to calm down your anxieties, because the people, the culture is very spontaneous. Very, very spontaneous. Just like she was sharing with me, the eruption of this current eruption of the volcano, if you're in the north and the wind is blowing south today, you're good. So as far as transport from region to region, from island to island, there are rough waters in between. So capsizing of public transportation happens a lot if you're not careful, because there's no telling what the waters will do. But we have transportation. We have transportation. The scheduling, though, is like Tyler Transit. It's not always reliable. You know, it's not always consistently reliable. Let me go ahead.
Oh, I will finish what you were saying.
So there is all kinds of possible transportation. Some, however, some of the ferry system, some of the airline, because the weather changes so much, sometimes there's only one flight to an island. Like if you're going to Batanes, which is a very beautiful exotic place, but only one flight a day and only one carrier flies there. So if you have to time it where weather is likely more favorable, or else we have our national flagship airline is the Philippine Airlines. PAL is the call sign. PAL. It's also known for plane always late. Yes, sir.
In the promo for today's talk,
Yes, sir.
it mentions that this new president was elected, Rodrigo Duterte. I know nothing about him, but it mentions the Philippines are moving away from the United States toward China. Also mentions he's launched a brutal war on drugs. I was wondering if you could tell me about the Filipino shift to China and about his war on drugs,
Okay.
how brutal it is.
Yes.
I hope he isn't throwing babies up in the air, spearing them with bayonets, but
Rodrigo.
I wanted to know about that, and also, is the Philippines still a republic, or is this Duterte become a dictator?
Okay, let's start from the end. Is the Philippines is still a republic? Is he? Well, the term right now that media is using, he's becoming more and more authoritarian. Same thing as dictator. Because not much of anything, I started my talk thanking the freedom of speech, and that's where it rubs. You know, whenever journalism is censored and journalists are silenced, that's when you know we have an issue. And there is some of that going on. Now, Rodrigo Duterte is president of the Philippines because he ran on two platforms: to destroy corruption, which most of anywhere that the Spaniard empire occupied, there's a lot of corruption. And we lived through that with the dictatorship. So undoing that will take time. And then the other platform that he ran on is against drugs. Well, he has done a lot to curtail drugs because we don't want, and people do not want to, and the government does not want the Philippines to become a narco state. However, because of poverty, that's a reality. Because of poverty, there is the attraction for drugs to be a business. Just like at one time, it was a fear for tourism. There was a significant decline in tourism because a lot of, not to harm them, but it was to get money out of it. Extortion, yes. There was the first, there was another.
The turn toward China.
Oh yes, yes.
Aligned
Right.
with China rather than the United States.
Right. That's actually the discussion on the back of the book, on the discussion for today's topic about the Philippines and relationship of the Philippines with China. It's posturing, government posturing because of what has been happening in what is called the South China Sea, which the Chinese calls it the South China Sea, but the Filipinos call it the West Philippine Sea. And the islands on that side of the Philippines, the Chinese are building because they have technology. They have equipment and logistics, so they've come to occupy. Now, of course, Mr. Duterte, the president, at the same time, we have to do something to stay friendly with who is closest to us, closest geographically, and China is right there. So it is not easy on his part as the executive branch of government to decide on policy as far as the relationship with the United States and China. So it's a quagmire of a decision. But if you want to know as far as his character, well, what can I say? Watch the United States President and double the arrogance, and there you have Mr. Duterte, especially as far as public speeches, you know, because Mr. Duterte is outright, he is well known to have not just criticized, but nearly violently talk about the Roman Catholic leadership and priests, and he has no fear of retaliation or anything. Very, very graphic.
Ed,
Yes.
you mentioned that where the Spanish have been, there's a lot of corruption. Why is that?
Why is that? That's a good question. I need to talk to some of my Mexican friends. We are known to be the Latinos of Asia. I think, why is it that there is quite a bit of corruption in the colonized nations from the Spanish regime? That's, to me, part of it, and maybe a small part of it, is because during that time, during those ages, the church and the government was almost one. So it was like there was no separation, there was no democracy. It was whoever has the gold makes the rule, and the church had the gold. And because they did everything in the name of God, and the people were subservient to them. And because of that, it was breeding corruption. Yes?
About a year ago, there was on the news something about an insurgence of ISIS. I think it was on Mindanao.
Yes.
Southern.
Yes.
Do you know if that was quelled or?
Okay. About 7% of the Philippine population is Muslim. Okay, the majority are Christians. A large majority of the Christians are Catholics, but not all. But in the very southern part, also in Manila, there are Muslims, and there are insurgents among the Muslims. Not all of them are Muslims, but because of our proximity to Borneo and Indonesia, there is relationship and there is a lot of influence that is carried around because of funding from the Islamic states. But now, because we are an archipelago, look at this. Because we are an archipelago, we do not border any other nation directly, unless there is a war or an ongoing war. There is no military budget. So somehow, the government allows for little wars to go on, even during a Marcos time. Because without that, he cannot say, we have to allocate this much funds. Because unless there's a war, you don't have to have a military presence or a strong military presence.
Isn't there still a U.S. military presence?
There is still some. Yes, there is still. The bases are not there anymore as it as we were used to it, but yes, there is still a lot of influences. Yes, sir. What kind of music? Oh boy, just like our food, very eclectic. We have a good mix of different influences. This is one thing that is quite fascinating. The Filipinos are very resilient even culturally. So we listen to all kinds, we listen and have all kinds of influences as far as music. Recently we hosted the Southeast Asian Games. This is a Filipino. So we have all kinds of Filipino mix. And he is Filipino, not mixed with Afro-American. He's Filipino mixed with a native. So we hosted the Southeast Asian Games. If you want to see how we party, look for the Southeast Asian Games 2019, because the opening ceremony for that was phenomenal. It was held in the Philippines, and fortunately it happened before the volcanic eruption, because it would have dumped it very badly. But it was fantastic games. More questions? I love questions. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
In your history, did communism ever take root in the Philippines?
There is Jose Maria Sison, who was the head of the Communist Party. He was funded strongly by China, and a little bit that was allowed during the Marcos regime, because that was reason to have funds. But you know, the funds were on paper. What happened to the funds that was acquired or approved by the Marcos regime? It went to his pockets. So that came up in the headlines, but the money that was supposed to have been approved by Parliament and we used to have a Senate, and now it's a new regime. Oh, by the way, I have some resources. There's only likely just one of each, but I want you to know the Filipino Immigrant Handbook. Imagine that. It's a handbook. Because these are given out in airports everywhere in the Philippine Islands. Okay? Interesting. U.S. bases and the threat of divided Philippines. Now this was, let me tell you, this was published. This was published during the Marcos years, but it's a very interesting look. And the cover shows the Islamic part of the country. Only in the Philippines. Oh, you can Google that. Only in the Philippines, because you will see a lot of very interesting videos. Only in the Philippines. Bantay ng bayan, the guardians of the country, of the nation, guardians of the nations, because all the elections during the Marcos years were rigged. They had results before the elections even happened. Interesting, huh? I have a copy of the Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines. This is the 1986. This is when the dictator was deposed. You know, he is from Paway, Ilocos. That is north of Manila. That is the province. But when he was carried out by helicopter, he thought he heard, he thought that we're taking you to Paway, but the Americans were taking him to Hawaii. And thankfully that happened. I also have the same constitution in Filipino, in the vernacular. Oh, by the way, I need to educate you on that. Filipino. Why is it with an F? Oh, okay. Why is it with an F? Spelled with an F. The letter F, Filipino. That's because it's based on King Philip. Felipe is whom the country is named after. Felipe II, Philip II. Okay, that's why the Spaniards named it the Philippines, and that's why we kept. Filipino is a noun, okay, and an adjective. It is used to describe I am Filipino, I am the person, Filipino, of Filipino descent. At the same time, it is the language. Okay, so when people ask, what do you speak officially? It's Filipino based on the dialect Tagalog, which is the most nationally spoken language. Okay, the female is Filipina. Yes?
I have heard years ago that higher education is free, the tuition free, as long as you can pass the exams to get into college.
I believe, I am not 100% certain, but I believe this happened during the Rodrigo Duterte time, that he established, do you know? I think he is the one that established higher education to be free. Yes, it didn't happen before that. But my time is up. I will stay as long as you need me for more questions. But thank you, Anne. Thank you, League of Women Voters.
We are dismissed, but be here next Wednesday. We have another good program planned for you. Check the sheets out there and pick one up if you didn't, so you'll keep up with what the program is. Thank you very much.